Okay, chapter 9, vector space. Okay. The operations used in vector addition and scalar multiples are not limited to the theory, but it can be applied to all areas in the problems in our society. For example, consider objects around you as vectors and make a set of vectors. Then create two proper operations, such as vector addition and scalar multiplication, from the relationship between the object. If these two operations satisfies two basic laws and 8 operation properties, then the set of vectors become a mathematical vector space. Okay? Then we can use all the nice properties that vector space has. In this chapter, we give an abstract definition of a vector space and deal with the general theory of vector space over Rn and Cn that you have studied so far from chapter 1 to chapter 8. Section 9.1, axioms of a vector space. Okay. In chapter 1, we defined the vector addition and the scalar multiplication in n-dimensional space Rn. In this section, we extend the concept of n-dimensional space Rn to an n-dimensional vector space, general vector space, from Rn to general n-dimensional vector space. Here's a definition of vector space. If a set V is a non-empty set and has two well-defined binary operations, one is vector addition and the other one is a scalar multiplication. And for any vectors in V and the scalars from R satisfies two basic laws: closed under the vector addition, closed under the scalar multiplication. Two basic laws. And 8 operational properties. 4 related to the vector addition and 4 related to the scalar multiplication. If this non-empty set of vectors with these two operations satisfies these two basic properties, basic laws, and 8 operational properties, total 10 properties. If it satisfies those 10 properties, we call this V, this non-empty set V, with these two operations, form a vector space. That's the definition. These 8 properties are this. First, commutative on vector addition, associative on vector addition. It has a 0 vectors in it, and it has a negative vectors in it. Scalar multiplication for the associativity laws for the three associativity laws for the scalar multiplication, and one for the what? The existence of the identity for the scalar multiplication. So when you multiply one scalar to any vectors, it doesn't make any change on those vectors. Okay, we call that is a scale the scalar identity for the scalar multiplication. So anyway, so this non-empty set satisfies these two properties and these 8 operational properties, the 10 properties. Then we say this non-empty set with these two operations form a vector space. In this case, the 0 in A3 called the 0 vector, and minus x in A4 is called the negative vector of x. Okay, so in general, when we say vector space, instead of just V, we write V with these two operations, binary operations, form a basis. So this is a proper notation. because we could have a different vector addition and scalar multiplication. We can have many different operations that satisfy that 10 properties. So we can have many different vector spaces with each different operations that satisfies 10 properties. For a same set with different operations, 2 operations, that satisfies 10 properties, we have different vector spaces each. So same set of same non-empty set can have many different vector spaces with different operations. Okay? Mm-hmm. Example. If x and y is an element in R3 and k is a scalar from R, then the vector addition and scalar multiplication, if we defined like this, like before in chapter 3, then this R3 with these 2 operations form a vector space, because we have shown that this satisfies all those 10 properties already in the earlier chapters. Okay? And this R3 with these operations form a vector space. So this is a vector space with these 2 operations over the set R when we use a scalar R. Second, in Rn, if these 2 vectors, and with the scalar R, if we define these operations, x plus y as before, and kx as before, like this, then it satisfies 2 basic properties. Addition of these 2 vectors is in Rn. Scalar multiple of this is in Rn. So it satisfies 2 basic laws. And also it satisfies all 8 properties easily. So it satisfies 10 property with these 2 operations. So this Rn with these 2 operations form a vector space. Okay? And then this vector space V satisfies these 4 properties as you seen before. Proofs are exactly the same. Instead of Rn, you are using V. That's the only difference, but all the proofs are exactly the same as before. It has the same property. When you multiply zero scalar on any vector, then it's going to be a 0 vector. If you multiply any scalar to a 0 vector, then it's going to be a 0 vector. And you can easily find the negative vector of x. And if kx equals 0, then scalar or the vector should be 0. 0 vector space. Yeah, Mr. Yi Gang asked on this. Here. 0 vector space. 0 vector space is a singleton set of 0 vector. For a scalar k, if the vector addition and scalar multiplication is defined in this way, if we defined the operation like this, then it satisfies 10 properties. So this form of vector space with these 2 operations easily can be checked. Yeah. Vector addition is in W. Scalar multiplication is in W. So it satisfies 2 basic properties. And if you check all the 8 properties, that both sides are all 0 with this. So it satisfies all the 10 properties. Okay? That's it. So it forms a vector space. We call it is a 0 vector space. Trivial vector space. Set of n by n matrices. Set of all n by n matrices. If we define a usual matrix addition and scalar multiplication like before, vector addition and scalar multiplication for the matrices, then it satisfies all 10 properties. Addition of 2 n by n matrix is another n by n matrix. Scalar multiple of n by n matrix is another n by n matrix. It's all closed under the vector addition and scalar multiplication, and it also satisfies all the 8 properties. Okay? So it satisfies 10 properties. So it forms a vector space. This set of n by n matrix with these 2 usual operations form a vector space. Okay, in this vector space, 0 matrix is a 0 vector, and negative A is the negative vector of the matrix A. Okay? Okay. When we write M sub n by n, that means that's a set of n by n matrix whose entries are all reals. When we say M sub n by n of C, that means set of n by n matrix with complex entries. Okay? Here, these are real. If we say this is R, then we will write C on here instead of writing R. Next, set of all continuous functions. Set of all continuous functions from R to R. We call this C of R. C of R. Then the two vectors from C of R and any scalar, if we define two operations like this, vector addition and scalar multiplication, then it satisfies all 10 properties. Addition of two continuous functions is a continuous function, closed. Scalar multiple of a continuous function is another scalar function, okay, another continuous function on R, okay. So if they are closed on the, they satisfy two basic laws and also 8 other properties. So the set of C of R with these two operations, it satisfies 10 properties in form of continuous function. Okay, the vector space. In this case, in this vector space, a zero function is a zero vector, and minus x is a negative vector of f. Okay. Okay. So when you say C of R, that means so that's the vector space with this. So any element in here are called the vectors, which is a continuous function from R to R. Pn, set of all polynomials of degree at most n, okay, with real coefficient, okay, with real coefficient. Then arbitrary two elements from Pn, let's say P and Q, then this P and Q can be written as a polynomials like this. Then if we define two operations like this, addition of these two vectors like this, addition of a scalar multiple of P of t is this, like this. If we define two operations like this, then it satisfies all 10 properties. Polynomial of addition of two polynomial is another polynomial of the degree at most n. And scalar multiple of a polynomial of degree at most n is also a polynomial of degree at most n. So it satisfies two basic laws. And also, it satisfies all 8 properties. So it satisfies 10 properties. So it forms a vector space over R when you use a scalar as R. And you choose a scalar from R. In this case, the vectors in a vector space, an element in a vector space, are considered polynomials. And also, zero vector in here is a zero polynomial. And minus P of t, when you define a minus P of t like this, then that's the negative vector of P of t, okay? Okay, when we say the vectors in P and P of n is a polynomial of degree at most n with the real coefficient. Yeah, okay. So Pn is a vector space. Subspace. When V be a vector, let V be a vector space and W is a non-empty subset of V. If W form a vector space with the same operation for the vector space V with two binary operations, then W is called the subspace of V. Okay. Same definition like before. So if subset is itself a vector space with the same operation of V, then it is called the subspace of V. For example, if this is a vector space, then the singleton set of zero vectors, and V itself is a subspace of V, because these V and this singleton set is a subset of V, and also it is a vector space. So they are subspaces. We call they are trivial subspaces. We always have two trivial subspaces. Think about the subspace of R2. In this case, we have two trivial subspaces of dimension 0 and dimension 2 for R2, and we have another subspace of dimension 1, which is a line passing through the origin. That was the classification that we had for R2. For R3, same thing. We had this three-dimensional subspace R3, and we have two trivial subspaces, and also of dimension 0 and dimension 3, and we have a subspace of dimension 1, which is lines passing through the origin, and we have a subspace of dimension 2, which is a planes passing through origin. Okay? So that's what we have learned. That's the example. Then how we determine a given subset is a subspace or not? We did use the two-step subspace test. Same thing work. Let this V is a vector space with these two operations, and W is a non-empty subset of V. The necessary and sufficient condition for W to be a subspace of V is these two, like what we did before. W is a subspace if and only if W satisfies these two properties. One, closed under the vector. W is closed under the vector addition. W is closed under the scalar multiplication. Okay? If we can show these two, then we can say this W is a subspace, which means W satisfies all 10 properties. If W satisfies these two, then clearly W satisfies all 10 properties. Why? Other 8 properties are working for any element in V. So it should satisfy for any element in W, which is a subset of V. So if these two are satisfied, then it clearly, all the other 8 operational properties follows. Okay, we can draw the zero vectors from here, and we can draw the negative vector from here, and we can draw the scalar, the identity for the scalar multiplication from these two properties. So any other properties are all true for any vectors in V, so it should be true for the vectors in W. Understand, Mr. Lee? Okay. So yeah, you know how to show the given subset is whether a subspace or not, easily by using these two-step subspace test. Let this W set of 2 by 3 matrices with this condition is a and then show it is a subspace of a vector space M of 2 by 3. How? We want to show the subset is this non-empty subset is a subspace. So all we have to do is check it is closed under the vector addition and scalar multiplication. So we choose 2 vectors from W. Choose 2 vectors from this vector space W. Then add these 2. Then this 1, 1 entry and 2, 3 entries are 0. So this is a matrix which is in W. Okay? So it's closed under the vector addition. W is closed under the vector addition. When you choose W to 2 vectors from W, then vector addition is in W. When you multiply scalar k on this x, then this also has a 1, 1 and 2, 3 entries are 0. So this matrix, this vector, is in W. So this W is closed under the scalar multiplication. So by two-step subspace test, it is a subspace of V. Okay? So W with the same operation is a subspace of M of 2 by 3 with this usual vector addition and scalar multiplication. But set of invertible matrices of order n is not the subspace of M of n. Why? When you choose 2 matrices from M of n and then add it, it can be a 0 matrix, okay, which is non-singular, which is singular, which is non-invertible. So this vector addition of 2 invertible matrices may not be invertible matrix. So it's, this set is not closed under the vector addition. So it's not a subspace. Let V be a vector space and S is a T vector, set of T vectors in V. Then show W, which is a span of these T vectors, is a subspace. Span. Now we are asked to show the span of these vectors are subspace of V. Easy. Linear span. So you choose. So what you have to do is check we satisfy two conditions, closed under the vector addition and closed under scalar multiplication. Choose arbitrary two vectors from W and scalar K from R. Then X and Y can be written as a linear combination of these K vector, T vectors. Then vector addition of these two vectors are also also linear combination of these K vectors. So it's in W, and Kx which can be written as this. So this is also linear combination of T vectors. So it is in W. So X plus Y is in W, Kx is in W. By two-step subspace test, W is a subspace of V. Done. Linear independence and linear dependence. A subset of VIs from a vector space V satisfies the following condition, then we call it is linearly independent. So let the linear combination of these VIs be zero vector and show Vi is equal to 0. If it is true, then those vectors are linearly independent, like what we did. If not, it's linearly dependent, which means there exists a non-zero CIs such that summation, linear combination of this is equal to 0. Then we call this is linearly dependent. Okay, so linear independence and dependence concept are exactly same as before. And EIs, 2x2 matrices. These are linear combination of this is equal. Let's set linear combination of this EIJ is equal to 0. Then clearly this coefficient should be 0. Should be 0. Which means these are linearly independent. So these four matrices are set of linear independent vectors in M2, linear independent vectors. But these ABC are not, because we can find the non-trivial linear combination of ABC, which makes it 0. So they are linearly dependent. But the subset 1xx squared up through the xn in the set of the polynomials, set of all the polynomials degree at most n. They are linearly independent. Okay? Why? Linear combination, let's set linear combination of this is equal to 0. Then that's the degree of the polynomial of degree n, which is 0, which means all the coefficients should be 0. So all AIs, CIs should be 0. Okay? So they are linearly independent. So these are the linear independent vectors in this set of polynomials, this vector space. So these set of vectors are linear dependent because one can be written as a linear combination of the others. Okay? So they are linearly dependent. These are. Okay? But these are linearly independent. Basis and dimension. If a non-empty subset of vector space V satisfies these two properties, two conditions, then we call it is a basis of V. What's the two conditions to make a basis? What is it, Mr. Park? Two conditions. One, spans the whole set V. Next, it should be linear independent. So if non-empty set alpha, non-empty subset alpha spans whole V, whole vector space, and alpha is linear independent, then we say this subset, this non-empty subset alpha is a basis for a vector space V. Like before, same definition, like what you did for Rn and Cn. Okay, in this case, the cardinality of this alpha, the number of elements in the basis alpha, is called the dimension of the vector space V, and we write it as a dimension of V like this. Okay? Mm-hmm. So in the earlier example 10, the EIJs form a basis for M2 because they are linearly independent. And any vector, any matrix, any 2x2 matrix in M2 can be written as a linear combination of these four matrices. So it spans M2. So these four vectors are linear independent and spans M2, so it should be a basis. What's the dimension of M2? What's the dimension of this M2? This is a basis. Oh, this form of basis. How many entries we do have? 4. So dimension of M2 is 4 because the basis has 4 vectors in it. Okay? So dimension of M2 is 4. And we have seen that this set is a linear independent in Pn. And any polynomials in Pn can be written as a linear combination of these vectors. Okay? So this spans Pn. So this is a basis. So what's the dimension of Pn, piece of n? What's the number? How many vectors in this set? It's from 0, 1, 2, 3, n. So we have n plus 1 vectors. So dimension of this Pn is a cardinality of vectors in here, which is n plus 1. Okay? So dimension of Pn is Pn plus 1 because we have a basis. Its cardinality is n plus 1. And as you see here, we can consider these Eij's as a standard basis for M2, and we can consider this 1 through x to the n be a standard basis for Pn, respectively. So for each vector space, we can think about a very basic standard basis, which was Ei's in Rn. For each of vector space has a standard basis, which can be easily dealt. Next example. Show these are bases for P2. These 3 vectors form a basis. What do you have to show? First, we have to show they are linearly independent, isn't it? And then span. For linear independence, make a linear combination is equal to 0. And solve it. Then as you see, C is 0, and A, B, and also 0. So A, B, C are all 0. So these 3 vectors are linearly independent. Easy. Span. How you show? Span. Arbitrary vector in P2, which can be written as capital A plus Bx plus capital C x squared, like this. This should be written as a linear combination of these 3 vectors. Okay? Solve it. Then this form of linear system of equation like this, which can be written here. As you see, this is a non-singular matrix. Has an inverse. Multiply the inverse, then we have ABC can be found the product of inverse of this times this. So little ABC can be uniquely determined always for any capital ABC. So for any polynomial in P2, we can always find the linear combination of these 3 vectors. Done. So it spans. So linear independent and spans, so it should be a basis. So these are also another basis of P2. 1, x and x squared is a basis, and this is also a basis for NP2. Then we have to check whether the given vectors are linear independent or not. Mathematician Wronski found a very nice way to check whether the given vectors are linear independent or not for the continuous functions. Suppose we have n continuous functions. Continuous functions. It can be a sine function or exponential function or a polynomial or whatever. Continuous functions, which is differentiable. At least n minus 1 times differentiable on the interval from minus infinity to infinity. If the Wronskian, which can be made with this, for this, since these continuous functions are differentiable, so we can find the first derivatives of these, and the second derivatives and n minus 1's derivatives on the as a nth law. Then we have an n by n matrix. We can find the determinant of it. We call that the Wronskian of this set of n continuous functions. If it is not a zero function, it shows these given continuous functions are linearly independent. That's it. Easy. Whenever you have a continuous functions, differential continuous functions, then you can always find the matrix, and you can always easily find the determinant of it. If it's not a zero function, then these functions are linearly independent. Okay, if Wronskian is a zero functions all the time, if Wronskian is zero for every x, if it's a zero function, then we can say that's not linearly independent, so it's linearly dependent. For example, if we have three continuous functions like this, which is differentiable, then we can have the functions here, and first derivatives of this, and second derivatives of that. So we can have a matrix, and determinant of the Wronskian, which is this function. This is not a zero function. This is not zero for some x. Actually, not zero for any x. So we can say these three vectors, three continuous functions, three vectors are linearly independent. And this shows, these are continuous functions. If we have different functions like this, or we can have a sine x here, sine of x here, then we can sine. We should have. Sine x here, x, sine x here. When you have, if we have a continuous differential functions here, and we can always find the Wronskian easily like this. This is not a zero function, so this is also linearly independent. Okay. So when let f of f1, suppose we have these two continuous functions, continuous differential functions, then we can check whether they are linearly independent or not. So these two matrices and two vectors and the derivatives of it, first derivatives, find the determinant of it. This is not a zero function. Okay? This is not zero for some x0, so it is a linearly independent. Wronskian is a not zero function, so linearly independent. But for these two vectors, two continuous functions, which are differentiable, and Wronskian is a zero function, always. It's zero for all x, so they are linearly dependent. Any questions on chapter 1? This is the end of chapter 1.